Hey everyone. I'm gonna make my first YouTube video on Kerbal Space Program. My goal is a couple primary objectives here. First, I'm bored waiting for version 0.18. So I set up a moon base, and a lot of people are still having trouble getting to the moon or anywhere else for that matter, certainly landing on it. So part of this is a tutorial to show people how it's done best. Secondly, I've got an agenda here. I'm sick of hearing people talk about MechJeb and other mods badly. I mean, seriously, you don't play this game with mods. What is your problem? So I'm going to show you why you might want to reconsider that foolish notion, and show you how you might get more enjoyment out of the game using some of these mods. Well, so what do you got here? Well, this is my Mooner return pod. It's a spacecraft that I've built. It's part of my MoonBase collection. It is incredibly overpowered for the job. I tend to build things big that can get almost anywhere in the solar system, and this thing can probably make it to Joule and probably land on some of the moons there. But I'm going to use it to get to the moon. So this has a single Kerbal pilot. One of the mods I have here is this is an unmanned crew pod. This is a second mod. This is right here. You can see this is a Kerbal tank, if you call it that. So basically this can hold 3 Kerbals, and that can hold 3 Kerbals. And the idea is this is living space on the moon for some of them, and this is a return pod in case those guys need to get home. The main living space down there, they can't get back to their home with it. That's what these are for. Right now I've got 2 on the planet, as well as a rover, and their main living quarters. This thing is going to be number 3 that goes there, so there's a total room for 9 Kerbals to live comfortably in addition to their main pod, and 9 of them can return home. This guy can return home on his own, so he's basically just a ferry pilot. As you can see, I got MechJeb installed. I'm going to be using MechJeb. One of the things I love about MechJeb is this. I can see my various staging. I can see my various delta V's of each stage and burn times. That is awesome. I'm not going to use it as an autopilot. I'll show you what I mean by that as I fly. Hopefully I will explain to some of you mouth breathers out there why MechJeb is awesome and get rid of some of the hatred. Now, one of the things I view about cheating, I actually do think is cheating in this game, but I still do it because I can, and I've boosted enough big payloads in orbit that I know how to do it. And this is completely stock, mind you. This is the fact that I'm going to use jet engines for my first stage to save a hell of a lot of fuel to get up to about 10,000, 20,000 kilometers. The reason this is completely cheating is in real life, the reason NASA, Ariane, Falcon 9, nobody does this, is the thrust-to-weight ratio of jet engines, turbofans in particular, maybe approaches 5 to 1 in the best situations. These things have thrust-to-weight ratios of a couple hundred. So I couldn't pull this off. I would need hundreds, maybe 1,000 of these things to do what I'm doing in real life, and it would be incredibly expensive. And just would be, it's easier to put a rocket under here. But because this is completely stock, according to you people, it's legit. More importantly, it does make life a little easier. And after you've slowed your computer down with 5,000 part spaceships, sometimes it's nice to just do this kind of thing. Second main stage here is my transfer stage. This thing, like I said, has plenty of delta V. You can see it has almost 5,000 delta V. This by itself isn't going to achieve orbit, so I'm actually going to use a lot of delta V. I'd build a better primary stage if I was worried about it. But this is going to achieve orbit, push me to the moon, deorbit me on the moon, get me part of the way down, and I still have plenty of delta V left. This is my lander. Again, incredibly overpowered. You're going to see I'm going to land with plenty of fuel left. Alright, so that's the festivities. That's what you're going to see. I'm going to basically show you how to get to orbit efficiently. I'm going to show you how to get to the moon efficiently. And I'm going to show you how to land very precisely within a click of all the other things in my moon base. And I'm going to fly it myself. Alright, here we go. So, next thing that you need to know about MechJeb that's awesome. You're going to see it's going to load with the windows that I normally use. I'm going to have my 2 computer windows. These are going to show me One of my major complaints about the game, one of the reasons I will not fly with MechJeb most of the time, is I like these windows. I like being able to see my orbital information, so I don't have to constantly go over here to see my orbital information. I'll show you what I mean by that as we fly. And then there's this. Now, some of this functionality will exist in 0.18, but one of the really nice things is this button right here, kill rotation. This is like ASAS as it should be implemented. So basically, this will hold the nose where I want the nose held. Just like if I had ASAS, we'll do exactly the same thing. But if I give a control input, this will allow me to input the control input and then continue on its merry way. So it's as if I turned off ASAS, moved the nose, and then turned back on ASAS. I don't know why they didn't implement this as a default option, because it really is nice. All right, here we go. So if you're going to build one of these hybrid rocket turbojet engine type things, first thing you need to do is your first stage, you gotta get the engines to full thrust before you go. You can see my thrust to rate ratio right now is 0.61. This thing would fall to the earth badly if I released it now. But I have 4 aerospike engines providing additional thrust on this first stage. There they are. So when I stage this thing, those 4 things are going to light off, the clamps are going to release, and I am going to very slowly climb into the sky. Oops, if my thrust were at 100%. And here I am telling you I'm a good pilot, and my thrust wasn't even 100%. But we recovered nicely, if not elegantly. Alright, so here we go. You can see my thrust to rate ratio is only 1.15. That ain't hot, but it's enough to do the job. And you can see I'm going to rapidly climb to a good cruising speed, and I'm going to use these jet engines to very efficiently, not use much of my fuel, get about 10-12K before I light off my primary engine on this main stage, which is going to get me basically out of the atmosphere. For you newer pilots, one of my goals, like I said, was to train newer pilots how to fly. There is a right way to achieve orbit, and there's a wrong way to achieve orbit. And the right way to achieve orbit is you don't want to push straight up as far as you can go. You want to turn sideways. It's what's called a gravity turn, and push sideways as soon as you can. I'm gonna show you how I do it for this engine, for this rocket. It varies from rocket to rocket to rocket. I'll show you what I mean. I'm gonna start my gravity turn at about 10K. That's where the atmosphere starts to get thin enough that I'm not losing a huge amount of velocity to drag. Also, that's the point where these turbojet engines start losing lots of efficiency. So that's a good call for this rocket. Now, if I had a really overpowered rocket, I would go horizontal faster than I will with this rocket. That's because I'm going to hit about 50K apoapsis when this stage is going to run out of fuel. My second stage is running 4 Nerva engines, and it has an initial thrust to rate ratio of only about 0.7. You can see that here, it's 0.63. So the problem with that is I will never achieve orbit if I'm already horizontal at that point. So I'm going to basically do a gravity turn where my thrust vector is about 45 degrees and hold it there. So you basically have to practice this. Sometimes for a very new pilot, it's good to let MechJeb actually take you to orbit so you can see how it's done. You're not going to want to do it with a complicated design like this. MechJeb would have a heart attack if we tried to do this. But you can basically learn it, and once you get a good idea how to do it, you'll get better at doing it with different crafts. Each spacecraft has its optimal trajectory, and you kind of gotta just practice to get close to that. And I'm not promising this is the optimal trajectory for the spacecraft, but it's not bad. Alright, you can see we're at about 8.5 kilometers, we're climbing. And if you haven't played with turbojets, you can see I still have a pretty good efficiency and incredibly good specific impulse, which is why these are so efficient to climb this way. Like I said, you wouldn't be able to do this in real life, but it's stock, so it's not cheating. Alright, at about 12K, you can see I'm still climbing in velocity. My velocity is still going up. When my velocity starts going negative, I'm going to start my gravity turn and light off this second engine. In fact, I'm going to start my gravity turn now. I'm going to go at about 20 degrees off vertical and light off the next stage. You can see my thrust to rate ratio just went through the roof. And I'm burning through fuel.